Bam. All right, so we're on episode 39, and our subject today is going to be a continuation of our filmography. Um, Last time we did Ridley Scott, and then
Shyamalan,
Shyamalan, Quentin.
Tarantino.
Yeah.
I think those are the. I think those are the only three. Oh wait, yeah. I think those are the only three.
Did we do James Cameron? No, we did not.
We talked about him, but we didn't go through his filmography.
Right.
That's true.
We did talk about, yeah. I mean, that might be fair enough to say that's enough of him.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
I mean, he's made great movies, but it's like we already went through. We were already talked pretty in depth about like Terminator 2 and versus the original Terminator, and
Right.
I mean, there's like, I mean, I don't know how much we could always talk about Aliens or something like that, and Titanic or The Abyss or any of that stuff. But I mean, I don't know.
What is your favorite?
I feel like favorite Terminator. I mean, he's a T2 is the definitive.
Does anybody have a different opinion? Because I'm a T2 kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm pretty much T2 kind of guy. Pretty much.
You're the tiebreaker over here.
Tiebreaker.
I know. I was
How?
His vote counts more than ours.
Oh,
he has a better
counts
voice.
double.
Yeah. Triple.
Triple.
Actually, I would just put us at exactly the tie. Never mind.
I never saw Terminator 1, so I can't weigh in.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One day
It's good.
we will expose you to it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terminator.
Like,
The original Terminator
It's
is
more
incredible.
like I hadn't seen it wholesale. It's
Oh, like
You've
not
seen
that I
bits and
didn't
pieces.
watch it. It's
oh,
just that I didn't see it like beginning to end.
oh yeah. Like you saw parts of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, it's a good one. But T2, yeah, really good one. Let's see. Maybe we can talk about
Go right.
there's
Yeah.
Edgar Wright, Peter Jackson, Nolan.
Oh, yeah.
I think we've already. I feel like we've already talked about Nolan enough, anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
in the
if
of his
there's any-
independent films, pretty much we've talked about his films on our own time,
True.
and not. But
Maybe we could just go through it real quick.
I mean, yeah, we could. I mean, I feel like we could definitely go through it, but definitely on when we're talking on the time travel episode when we're talking about like Tenet and stuff, I feel like we went through some of his
good
other
amount of
movies
stuff,
as well.
yeah.
But we can still go through it if you want.
okay, I'll go ahead
I
and
mean,
say
I don't care.
Tenet is my least favorite one of his movies.
Okay.
The least favorite, really.
I liked all his other ones much better than this one,
Interesting.
including The Dark Knight Rises.
Wow,
Yeah.
for you, that's pretty.
Wait, Dark Knight
Interesting.
Rises is also.
And I hate The Dark Knight.
Oh, okay.
But
it's like at the bottom. Got
Carlos
it,
is notorious.
right.
Yeah, he really doesn't like that movie.
Right.
We've talked
You know-
extensively about it in the past.
It's fine. A lot of people didn't like it. I think. They,
I mean, it's fine. I'm just surprised that Tenet is your least favorite. Like, what about that movie like makes it worse than? Because
Here,
I think you're
we'll
like
go-
me
we'll-
in terms of.
Let's go
Well-
over all of his director stuff. So let's go from like even the ones in his shorts. There's Tarantula.
Chilla, I'm pretty sure he didn't make a tarantula. There's one.
Larceny, Double Bug, Following, Memento, which I love Memento.
I think, yeah.
Insomnia, Cinema 16 British short films, Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar. Oh, what the hell's Quay? I don't know. Dunkirk and Tenet.
Right, so that's like mixing in his director stuff as well as like
Right.
his writing stuff because like he didn't write Insomnia. Yeah, so
He didn't direct it. Yeah.
Well, it says
No,
here on
he-
IMDb is
No, he-
director, but I don't know.
he
could be
directed Insomnia. He didn't write
Ah.
Insomnia.
Ah,
I think it's the same with Interstellar, right? Oh no, he is the writer. of
No,
Interstellar.
he wrote it. Yeah.
I think he was like one of the writers, right? There was like him and his brother was
Well, yeah, it's usually either him or him and his brother.
right.
I guess I'm not exactly familiar with all of his stuff. Like just like the major stuff is, Memento.
Yeah, I mean, we're not
Batman
saying
trilogy.
anybody should watch all of them. You know, just the ones you know of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But
So
going
which
over
one's your
10,
favorite then? Like of all his films?
shit, I think it's got to be between Inception and Memento.
Mm.
Memento being just, I mean, the way that he twists the storytelling and that,
Yeah.
That if you can kind of tell that the very first scene is going to be the last, but the way that you get there, the way that he just kind of blows your mind from the with a little bit of with the plot twist at the end, it's just like he makes a whole like Memento's all about memories, and the entire movie it's an entire exploration on like how memories shape the story that you tell yourself about your life, and
Right.
how just one and just how one of those memories can be false or it can be altered, and it just alters your entire trajectory in life.
Mm.
Like the poor guy, he wanted to find the killer of his wife, and he he never knew that he already found him. He killed him long ago, but he can't move on from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I would say my favorite is definitely, I would say, Memento for me. And then least favorite, that's kind of hard because like there's not like a big giant dip in quality between them. Because I feel like the least favorite I have is still really really good, but it's a hard toss up. I think maybe more so his recents, Dunkirk and Tenet. Like for me, like it doesn't top it with everything. And then I don't know, like maybe Batman and that trilogy is kind of like an aside. It doesn't really. It's not like it's still something that's kind of adapted. So there's some things that like I feel like you kind of have to give them a pass on just because they have certain things they can't necessarily do. But at the same time, I do agree too. Dark Knight Rises, if you just stack them against the three, then yeah.
Well, I mean, you
for
could
me-
put the Prestige in that camp then too, because
right,
it's
that one's
on
based on a book,
Mhm.
yes, which is a great point to bring up. That Prestige is had similar constraints, or at least like something that they had to manipulate in the first place, or they didn't just create it from thin air, or like their own
Right.
original
It's not wholly
concept.
original.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, like, but I still like Tenet and Dunkirk. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
Sure.
in his own personal catalog of stuff, I would say maybe wasn't as like the best ones, but it still had really like good concepts and like really inventive ways of filming that I think nobody
You mean
can take
Tenet.
that away.
in this case.
Well, no, like Dunkirk did really a good job of like portraying the story as is without
Yeah.
like completely confusing the audience of like the timeline. And what they did with I think it was one of the scenes. So the fact that he still just does not like he doesn't use a lot of CGI. Like he really tries to like make sure that everything is like happening in a practical sense.
As
It's
practical as possible.
yeah, it's just some of the things on there. It's like really hard to imagine how you can, like, how much of it that they had to push to make that happen. So I feel like
Yeah.
Dunkirk is still like phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that is interesting about Dunkirk is too the way that it was filmed, right? Especially the the dogfights between the planes, where they feel real.
Yeah.
They don't have all this, all these long shots that would obviously have to be made with CG nowadays, and they don't really come like really close to each other. Like it really feels like you're there with the pilot. Like I think that was his focus to make it feel like it's, real, not movie exaggerated.
But yeah, I mean that's what I would say for him.
I mean,
So why is Tenet like your least favorite, Carlos?
there's too much exposition. I feel like that there's too many points in which like they have to keep explaining to you the rules of the game, and um and the position of the pieces of the chessboard in order for the action to actually happen. And like at the very end, it's a really really interesting concept. Um, to have like this like narrative that just ends up in the um that kind of that reflects the very thing that explains itself to be like this whole temporal pincer maneuver, where it starts at the where both the beginning and the end kind of start, and they have to meet in the middle, and that's exactly where
Right.
we end in the movie. um but at the very end, I'm just there was just so much exposition to me that it just I kept waiting for something to happen. And once it happened, I had to like re-understand it over and over.
Right.
And also, I guess none of the characters like actually I actually felt compelling, because they are really just kind of tropes of the characters. Like he
They're
doesn't really.
archetypes.
Yeah, they're archetypes. Yeah.
Right.
And it's not that it's a bad thing.
It is very different than his other movies, though, where you feel some sort of emotional connection to
Yeah.
the characters.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't even interested in naming his protagonist. Like that's literally his name, the protagonist.
I mean I don't know that he wasn't interested in it. I think that was the point. Like it's supposed to be like a very cold, like reminiscent of like the Cold War-esque spy movies. But yeah, that's that's a lot of people's complaint about it, and I do agree with that point. But yeah, that's interesting. I can definitely understand that. It's definitely his most confusing movie for sure. Yeah, I'd say. I mean, my favorite is Inception. I'd say. I think that movie is just really incredibly well done. It's masterfully well done and shot, and that movie has a lot of exposition too, as any movie like high concept movie does. I mean, Ellen Page's whole character is basically made for the exposition.
Yeah, she's supposed to be the audience
She's the
avatar. Yeah.
Right, and she's the architect of the dream, so she has to know the rules. So it makes sense that like he's telling her the rules as we're learning them. But I think Inception is incredibly well done. I'd say my least favorite is probably Interstellar. I don't really. I think the first half of that movie, where Matthew McConaughey's character is mostly on Earth, is far stronger than when they get into space. I feel like it kind of starts to fall apart there, where it's like it becomes sort of these more, I don't know, obscure concepts like like love being the through line of the entire movie, and the love between his daughter and like the father, and I get all that, but it doesn't really work for me in the way that Anne Hathaway has sort of her connection to like her dead fiance or whatever. It's I don't know, it sort of falls flat for me, and it's a shame too, because I love space and I love movies that take place in space, but for me, when that movie sort of while there are cool concepts like the whole like time dilation and all this stuff, like how like that stuff's awesome and that works really well, but I feel like by the time you get to like the Tesseract at the end, and like I feel like unless you know at least a little bit about the science, like you're not gonna just understand what the fuck's going on in that in that scene where he's just floating through that and like he's seeing like that. Like I feel like you'll understand that, oh yeah, he was the ghost. That's why like Merv. That's why she, you know, the book got pushed over, and that's what sort of makes her understand the whole thing, and it brings it full circle. But you're not going to understand where the fuck he is. Like, you're not going to understand like what's going on. And that's sort of my thing is like where like your biggest complaint with Tenet is like there's too much exposition. For this one, I feel like while there's exposition and there's a good amount of it, I feel like it almost doesn't explain it. Yeah, it almost doesn't do a good enough job explaining it to just like anyone who's not even, you know, remotely versed in science, or they have, you know, just someone who's coming in completely fresh is going to be, I feel like, pretty confused by a lot of the stuff that's getting thrown at them.
Yeah, honestly, it really feels like the thing that needed the most explanation, the fifth dimensional tesseract inside the black hole, the one that thing that's supposed to say, hey, you know, this is how the beginning of the movie is connected to the end of the movie. This is how it's working. It's the thing that got the less explanation, and the thing that we all kind of have heard from, you know, from what's the movie called? Event Horizon. The thing about black holes that we have all seen like 100 times. Like, that's explained to us all over again.
That same exact example too.
Yeah. Totally.
No, that's I can totally see that. Like one of the most disappointing things to me was about Interstellar. While I loved its visuals, was the thing about love.
Yeah,
most people, like, I hear a lot of people like did not like that.
I just feel like the movie kind of uses it as a crutch, to sort of bring the audience like along for the journey. And I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of people, and I've listened to podcasts where they explain why Interstellar is like their favorite Nolan movie, and I totally understand that. But it's definitely, it's just. Whereas like his other movies, I feel like they're like the pieces really do come together. Even in something like Tenet, where I don't feel like it's his best movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I also don't think it's his worst. I feel like even there, like the pieces are. I don't know. They're more congruent, and they sort of fit together better than the pieces of Interstellar do. Where it's sort of like with Interstellar, it's like there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but as a movie, as a cohesive experience, it just doesn't really land for me.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's two movies like going on at the same time. There's one where that it's completely interested in the high concept things about time travel and outer space and black holes and stuff, and it's like really interested in the science, and that's Christopher Nolan. He's really like intellectually curious. And then there's the thing about love, and that's supposed to be the kind of thing that's supposed to be like it's supposed to be padding the the plot holes.
Right.
But it just I feel like it really reflects the fact that he's less interested in that kind of stuff. He's less interested in love. Because it just, to be fair, so are we.
Okay.
But just, as a cinematographer, he just, it feels like, that's been explored a lot of times. Like, and there's other, there's other filmmakers that definitely put a lot of like that kind of sentimentality in their science fiction, like like Steven Spielberg, like he's very he's more interested in exploring that fiction side of the of science fiction, whereas Nolan is more interested in the science part of the science fiction.
Right. I mean, they got a Nobel Prize laureate to actually like be the consultant for the movie to make sure like even if the stuff that they're saying isn't necessarily like scientifically accurate, it is still plausible and on every level, which I like. I like that they went through that, and that's a sort of that's a testament to Nolan's attention to detail, and it is. I guess one of the last things I'll say about Interstellar and sort of the way I feel about it is that it really does feel like two different movies in terms of the quality for me. Whereas like I said, like the stuff on Earth, not only before Matthew McConaughey leaves, but also after he leaves, and once you see like Murph grow up into, you know, Jessica Chastain, and like and you just get to see sort of the state that the Earth is in and how they're trying to stop it, and how you realize that it's, you know, you eventually realize that it's pretty much hopeless. Like, you know, like there never was a plan B. Like it was like the hope is that like Matthew McConaughey and the crew get there and they can basically build the colony. And like that all the stuff on Earth is like far more interesting to me. And I feel like far better structured and laid out. And it's like so much more compelling to me. And I feel like that's where most of the substance in the movie is on Earth. And then they kind of leave that behind when they go into space. And that's where all the spectacle is. Like that's where you get it's exactly what you were talking about, Carlos, where you get you get the crazy Tesseract scene, or you get like the black hole scene where he's trying to redock with the ship, or you get, you know, the time dilation stuff, or you get you know, where they land on the planet and it's like, oh, is that a mountain? No, that's a wave. And the whole planet, like, you know, it's like all that stuff,
dude.
Yeah, like the whole that's where all the spectacle is. And that's where like the popcorn movie comes in, where it's like, oh man, like this is really cool. This is really fun to watch. But like I feel like in all of Nolan's other movies, all of them, like he blends that spectacle and that substance together so much better than he does in this movie. It just feels like it almost feels like they're, I don't know, separated by some sort of invisible wall. But yeah, I mean,
One fun fact, you guys might already know this, but the visualization of the black hole was actually done with like a real, you know, physics simulator, and it was like the very first time that it had been that they have used like that kind of physics to visualize it. They actually give it an astrophysicist to, you know, supervise it. And at first, like when they gave the astrophysicist the simulation, they were like, "Is there something wrong going on over here?" Because when they simulated it, like, and you might know this again, like black holes, they have this disk around them that it's called an accretion disk, and it's the remnants of everything that the black hole has yet to swallow, and that it's just basically orbiting around it, and because everything is you know, brushing against each other at such high speeds, they are causing an enormous amount of friction. So it's incredibly bright. It's basically like a Saturn ring with an incredibly like high temperature. Like it's, but you know, it's millions of degrees high. But the way that it's visualized, you can see that it's all warped, and like the halos that are you know above and below the black holes are actually the both sides of the ring. Like you're seeing the other side of the accretion disk that you couldn't see even if you're just looking at it head on. And so when the astrophysicist looked at it, he was like, "Oh yeah, that's what would happen because of the way that the fabric of space is bent around. The light is bending around those things like a lens. So you're seeing all sides of the accretion disk at the same time."
Right. It was the first time that the math actually was applied to a visualization at all. Ever.
Yeah. And that's what.
And even now, like they even use that as like that same whatever program they used to plug in the math. They're using that even today to explain what it would look like theoretically. But I mean that. Yeah, it's interesting that they film actually increased our knowledge of science.
Yeah, it contributed to our knowledge of science. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
It unfortunately didn't contribute to our knowledge of love.
Oh man. Did AD what Nolan films have you seen? If any.
Batman, Inception, and Tenet.
Oh, okay. Of
all the
those...
Batman movies?
Yeah.
Nice. So what would you say is your amongst that your favorite and least favorite.
Say, I mean, this one's kind of a no-brainer. I actually didn't mind Tenet, so that's not my least favorite on that list. Uh, one of the problems I do tend to have in Nolan movies, though, is that a lot of dialogue gets buried under the music. So, what was frustrating about Tenet was that it feels like a lot of the stuff that felt important to hear was buried under the soundtrack. And
Interesting.
that's the only complaint I have about it. Because, like, it's not that it's hard to follow. It's just that it feels like a lot of the key points going like, wait, would you mix this better, please? But
yeah,
Right.
I would say The Dark Knight Rises is one of my least favorite of the trilogy, because
Yeah.
I don't know, just to put it bluntly, I wanted a big fight with Batman and Bane, and there was no fight with Batman and Bane.
Very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
The biggest fight with them
is
the one in the middle of the movie, right? Where he's like monologuing him. That one's way cooler than like the final fight.
The final fight
which gets cut short by Talia al Ghul, who no one knows unless you've read the fucking comics or watched the animated movie. It's like, oh, I'm Talia al Ghul. Most of the audience was like, who? Like, we don't not only do we not know your character, but like your father was in like the first movie like 2 movies ago, years ago. Like, how would we even know who the fuck that is?
What a twist.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, that is the one movie in which Batman totally killed somebody, and we pretend he didn't. Because he totally killed, Talia al Ghul.
Right. Wait, she killed herself though.
He
right?
must die for our ship.
Wait. Wait, did she?
Because he caused her to have the accident.
He shot.
That it stops.
Yeah, but that's Batman logic, though. He didn't.
Isn't that?
He didn't kill her like the ground did. Gravity killed her. That's classic Batman logic.
That is a classic Batman
kills
logic.
People all the time, but it's like,
he never admits it.
I broke this dude's legs and left him with a concussion, hanging upside down in a snowstorm. It wasn't me that killed him. The elements did. Like, that's classic.
It wasn't the fall that killed him. It was the sudden stop.
That's another one, right? Dark Knight, where he throws fucking Maroni off of the terrace or whatever and breaks both of his legs. He could have easily killed him there. He didn't know he was gonna live. Like,
do you see him doing the math? I don't think so. Jeez.
I mean, it was mostly an aftermath movie, and everything about that aftermath was saying, hey, there's consequences for the previous movies and your actions here. It's like, okay, we can't really have Batman have his big ass entrance and start fighting crime like the other, like the last movie. It's like, I don't know, there wasn't really much flash for a Batman movie. And when Batman did come back into action, it was disappointing. And just, at least, like, Dark Knight, as tragic as it is, a lot of the best parts are because of the drama, not the fights. There wasn't even that much fighting at the climax of the movie, but it was still fucking exciting. It's like, you could... It's not that there wasn't a fight in Dark Knight Rises. It's just that you had that buildup that was just betrayed. That's why I was mad about that shit. Now,
fair enough.
If we're going into it, like, I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a favorite, but I definitely know that I can stand to watch The Dark Knight all over again because it's that much of a ride. And to be fair to some of his original works, like Inception, I love that because it's scenery porn. Like, the set design is just so beautiful in that.
Yeah.
And it's just the fact that their dream sequences justifies this need to have all these different types of settings. Like, oh man.
Okay, that's a good point.
So it doesn't really have to connect. It's just one minute you're in a snowstorm, the next you're in a Japanese castle, and
right. It's like the perfect excuse to just go at
building
with the craziest backgrounds. Nice.
Right, you don't know how you don't have to know how you got there or anything, because like they say in the movie, like all dreams, it starts in the middle. So you're already there in this like crazy locale without having to know how you got there.
Right.
Just even if one isn't into high concept stuff, I still find that Inception is that kind of movie you can enjoy without trying to pick up logistics of diving into other people's dreams or like giving them ideas that aren't necessarily their own. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's taking the joy of heist movies and taking it to this fantasy world. It's just, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you like heist movies, even if you're not big into science fiction, you'll probably still like Inception. Kind of the same way, like if you're really into spy movies. I mean, obviously, I think Inception does it better. But if you're into spy movies, especially from like the Cold War era, then like you'll probably like Tenet, because it's just a spy movie with a time travel twist. So it's good.
It also, Inception has the perfect ending.
Yeah,
that's like the unexplained is.
Good. That like little top, ending at not not knowing whether that top stops or not,
like, is why it's a good ending.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before on talking about other like Ridley Scott stuff and some of the stuff with Prometheus, and how even though it's a good movie, like it would have been better to leave it out of the Alien franchise and have more ambiguity. Like Nolan tends to balance that ambiguity and just add in just enough. So that it works really well. And that ending is the perfect example of that, where it's like, we don't know, and it's okay that we don't know.
And it's even better when you watch it with an audience. Like, I remember watching it on premiere night. Like, we're all looking at the thing,
and everybody's holding their breath, and then
and then it cuts off, and everyone's like, ah.
And even the sound, the audio is like as if it's holding its breath too. Like, I remember that scene specifically. It's the music, the sound, the background. It's just all that was kind of like in a way, like the audience itself trying to hold their breath,
right.
And then that exhale right as like it cuts, was just like, whoa. It's not as disappointing as, say, like Matrix Reloaded, where it's like da 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 and then cuts. Well, fucking Smith.
Yeah. A whole nother can of worms. we could get into
the masterpiece that is
get into the Wachowskis.
I haven't watched any of the Wachowski movies in years, though. Like, in terms of the newer ones, like I don't think I watched. I don't think I watched anything like since like Speed Racer, which was like 2007 or something.
Who saw Speed Racer? I did not see it.
I did.
I saw
you saw it? Okay, you saw it. Okay, maybe we. Yeah. D, have you seen it?
Nah.
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it either.
Very long time ago.
Like, I
pretty much
don't
when it came out and never saw it again. Like, I remember one of the.
I mean, I do remember liking it more than a lot of other people did, but I don't really remember the movie that well.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it. I remember that one of the things that they were making a big deal out of was the camera that they were using that didn't have it had a special lens that could focus everything in the scene. Like, there was no there was no depth of field that there was no bokeh depth of field that you would see like different things that like different
that's interesting,
like, focus, like everything was just in sharp focus.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they wanted it for the for that specifically.
For the effects that they could, like, does it have to do with the effects that they had to end up doing or something for the film?
I guess it kind of felt. I guess I think the explanation was that it felt like it added to the feel of a comic book of of a almost cartoon feel.
Huh.
I know, anime feel. Please don't crucify me here. But yeah, I think that was the whole point. It was a very colorful movie, and I guess that it was entertaining to watch at the time.
Mm. Yeah, I think the only thing I've ever watched of them is basically the Matrix trilogy. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all I really know of them of.
The
Okay.
Wachowski siblings, sisters.
Yeah.
Um,
What's the
oh,
next one? Let's
I
see.
remember liking V for Vendetta. It's totally different from
Oh
the.
right, they did do that.
Yeah, it has a different. It's less complicated than the actual comic book by Alan Moore, but even watching it nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, I dig this.
Huh.
It's all right. It's very all right.
I remember that being, a lot of people enjoyed it, enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. And it was just like everybody liked it for its like political kind of
Commentary on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what was really doing it for a lot of people. Jupiter
watching it now-
Ascending. Oh, they did. Oh, some.
Oh,
one
the
of them-
masterpiece, man.
They
Oh
did.
yeah,
They written
Channing
it.
Tatum and
I
Mila
guess.
Kunis.
Channing Tatum is it's a dog hybrid in that movie.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, they got. Yeah, you're right. Wait a minute, they did direct that. Ugh.
Yeah.
What about Cloud Atlas? I think I remember seeing that.
Oh yeah, that was based on a book of the same name.
I barely remember that movie.
It followed a lot of those reincarnation stories that they like to tell, that they follow from the that they also like to tell with with the Matrix, and also with Jupiter Ascending, where in Jupiter Ascending, that girl is basically the reincarnation of an empress of the galaxy who owns the Earth, from what I remember. Yeah.
Oh man.
And then the empress's descendants, one of them wanted to marry her. It was weird.
That is weird.
And yeah, I would like to see the script.
I think it's one of those for me. That movie must have been one of those where I only saw parts of it and I didn't see the whole thing.
To me,
yeah.
it felt like that was almost like the kind of thing, like it must have been much more fun to actually read in a script, and I feel like
right than actually experience the watching.
Yeah.
It. Mm.
Yeah, because it feels like there was a lot of like world building that just wasn't there in the movie.
Oh, okay. I see.
I feel like a lot of it just got caught up.
Watch it for that. I mean, like even if it's like not good, and like there's some films that like even if it's not good and it doesn't stack up to the kind of anticipation and stuff, like if
I
they
don't think
have
anybody was anticipating that movie, but yeah.
right, yeah, like well, I don't know, but like I mean, I just like if they did something interesting in there just for the sake of seeing it for what it is interesting to me. Sometimes when watching a film, it's just like it's almost like I want to see why it like kind of figure out for myself why it may not have worked out.
Sure.
Sometimes. So, but I'm curious, yeah, because like translation between a book and a movie, it's not easy. And it seems like from what I saw, I haven't seen it, the trailers and read reviews. It seems like it was just too big of a project for the, it was like way too grand of a thing to kind of just fit into a movie.
Yeah. It's the same thing with Cloud Atlas. Like I've read the book, and that's a long book. That it spans like not only millennia, but it's also like a book that's like that's different genres. Like one of them is a spy, a journalistic spy, movie set in the 70s. The other one is a first person account from a person in the 1800s, like visiting some cannibals. There's like this futuristic one. There's the comedy one. Like it has like all these different genres, and it's an ambitious book that sometimes doesn't work, and I feel like the movie is pretty much the same.
Okay. I mean, nice little side there. So we were talking about James Cameron, Nolan. What about Peter Jackson?
Oh yeah, he sucks. No.
He's a big stupid doodoo face. Did we talk about him? I can't remember if we talked about him.
No.
I don't think we have.
Okay.
I think it's hard to emphasize just how monumental, it felt to have the Lord of the Rings at the time. Like, it was just such a huge, gigantic project.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's amazing that they were able to pull it off like the way they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, New Line Cinema basically bet everything on that trilogy because that, for those who don't know, like the whole trilogy. Well, I mean, for them, like it's not even like it was literally like either this succeeds or the entire studio will be shut down. Yeah. Like it's like it's not like, oh well, if this doesn't work out, we're in trouble. It's like, no, it's over. If this doesn't work out, it's over for everybody involved. For those who don't know, like the movies were filmed all at once over a 2-year period. Peter Jackson, he co-wrote them and he directed them, and I mean they were really awesome. I mean, to me that's still the only perfect movie trilogy. And I say that basically based on the theatrical versions, not the extended versions. I like the extended versions, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff there that is kind of goes better unsaid and unseen than like showing it. Stuff like bringing back, like in the extended version of the Two Towers, like bringing back like the flashbacks of Boromir and like his dad, who we don't see in the theatrical versions until Return of the King. Like we basically get introduced to him in like Two Towers, and we see things about them, and sort of basically just showing stuff that's already explained by Faramir to Frodo and Sam in the Two Towers. Like we don't need to see it, it doesn't really add anything to it by seeing it. And I feel like that's a lot of the scenes in the extended versions. Like there's some cool stuff there, but the theatrical versions for me, like it's still like the only perfect film trilogy in my opinion. And I mean, I just remember going to see every single one in theaters because they would like they came out Christmas of 2001, then Christmas 2002, Christmas 2003, like Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, and it was just so exciting to like just know that like, oh man, like I remember like seeing it with some friends, seeing Two Towers with some friends, and like being left on that cliffhanger of like, who is Gollum talking about? Like who is he bringing Sam and Frodo to? Who is she? Like, and it was just like, oh man, we got to wait a year. It's crazy. And it's just, I mean, I think between Two Towers and Return of the King is when I read like all the Lord of the Rings books. And it was just like, oh man, I haven't had like, there are sort of few films where like films or even TV series, like something like Game of Thrones, where like, I really, really want to dive into like every single piece of like source material for this thing, like while I'm waiting for the next one. Like, because I did the same thing with a similar thing with Game of Thrones, where like between season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, there was like a 2-year gap. And I read like the first 2 books between that. And then I read when the series was over and, we got the 8th season, for better or worse. I read
for worse.
Definitely for worse. I read through the 3rd, 4th, and 5th book, and it was cool because you, Carlos, were reading through them at the same time too. And we kind of got to talk about them, and it was awesome because like the show was already over, but like seeing the books, like the show definitely does some things better, and I think the books do some things better. But like it was cool to see like even though the show is over, you're getting like extra scenes and you're getting extra like, descriptions of characters and like all these other events. Like the fact that like in the books, like something that's never mentioned in the show that like Cersei was actually in love with Rhaegar Targaryen. Like she's always, we know in the show that she has this like incestuous relationship with her brother Jaime Lannister, but she was actually in love with Rhaegar Targaryen before he was killed, and she was ready to marry him, and she wanted to marry him, but because her the Mad King basically didn't think that she was good enough for her son, then she was promised to Robert Baratheon instead. And like that's a plot point that again is never touched on in the show, but because like just reading the book, it like just adds so many more dimensions to it. And that's how I mean, I didn't feel quite the same way reading the Lord of the Rings books, but it was interesting seeing like the trajectory that those books take compared to the movies. And I do think, like, I know, like, this is, I mean, it's not like anyone's listening to this, but like any purists, like I've heard, they're like, they hate the movies or they think the movies are fine, but the books are way better. I totally get it. And I totally get like how, in the books, like, the Tom Bombadil character is super important. I personally couldn't stand him. Like, I get it. Like he's a singing
diversion. Like
he's a singing dude who's like the oldest dude ever, and like he's seen everything. But I can't fucking stand all the singing in the fucking books. I can't stand it at all. And I understand how like in the books, like by the end of it, like basically the war has like touched everything. It's touched all the like every region, and including the Shire. Like the Shire is like not, it's pretty much fucked at the end of the books as well, like the same as the rest of the
books. It's taken over by Saruman.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally fucked. It's not like it is in the movies, but I kind of like I like the way it is in the movies more. I feel like the movies just do pretty much everything better. And that is such, I think that's the only time I can really say that in terms of like films being adapted from books where I've read both the books and the movies, and been like, man, I think the movie totally surpassed the book in like literally every way. Yeah, like, because I mean, like the Harry Potter books are my favorite books still. Just taking J.K. Rowling out of the situation, whatever you think about her, I don't care. Whatever, like, it doesn't matter. The books themselves are incredible, and I think they did a really great job on those movies. Like, I think they did the best job they could possibly do. They did, they had to cut a lot of stuff out. They had to change some stuff, but it worked out really well. But those movies in no way are better than the books. But man, like Lord of the Rings, like it did it. Like for me anyway, like it really did surpass the books in pretty much every way, which is.
It did a really good job of adapting, something that's written on the page to, something that works in a visual medium.
Yeah.
Like you said, those, those poems, those songs, they're not gonna work if you try to put them in the, in the fucking, movie.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the Hobbit movies don't work. I mean, those movies don't work for a lot of reasons, but like the fact that like the dwarves are like fucking singing in like the first 15 minutes of the first one when they like go to Bilbo's Hobbit hole, like I'm just like, this is fucking boring. Like, why are they singing? Like, this is so stupid. Like, this isn't a musical.
You guys remember that parody video where like they mix the somebody makes a parody of that scene when they go into Bilbo's house to to celebrate, and it's like together put together to the song with like shot.
Oh,
shot. That was definitely more entertaining than the whole thing.
Yeah. And the whole trilogy of the whole Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah. What's I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, a character like Tom Bombadil just wouldn't work in like the trilogy that they were setting up, but like in the movies, because it's supposed to be this kind of weird diversion where the hobbits are in this place that is being protected by this spirit of the forest thing, and it's supposed to be some sort of like both. It's supposed to feel like a hallucination and also feel like they're in this and it's escapism from the conflict in which they are in. Like it's just the kind of thing that just wouldn't work. But yeah, another thing that I really liked about the um, Lord of the Rings trilogy was just the epicness of the scale of the epicness of like all the battles and
Yeah.
like all the sets, like that battle in Helm's Deep. It's still like
Yeah.
the
So
best.
good.
Yeah, it's still the best large scale battle ever made.
I actually think the one I love that battle. I think the one in Return of the King, where like
Siege of Gondor.
Where like and it's like literally like an hour of just battling, but it's amazing. Like it's like I think like that battle and like the first 45 minutes of Saving Private Ryan may be like the best, most intense, just completely uncut, prolonged battle scenes ever filmed. Like it's so fucking well done. And it's just like in any other movie, it's just like, okay, an hour of like battling, like, okay, like there's gonna be some lulls, there's gonna be some boredom here and there. You know, there's gonna be peaks and valleys, but with that, it's just like, oh man, this is just awesome, like through and through.
Yeah, I mean, what works about those battles is that there's always little stories in between the fighting. Like it's not just two armies, slashing at each other for like half an hour like that.
Yeah, there's always character moments and important like emotional through lines and arcs that are even settled within the battle, and it's just so goddamn well done.
Yeah, there's a little comedy relief between, and some things that are interesting that the movie did was also expand on the friendship between Legolas and Gimli. Like that's not even in the books at all.
Yeah, they only have like I think how like they have like in the appendices at the end of Return of the King, how they kind of like go over some of like the stories. Yeah, and like how Legolas and Gimli they like go traveling or whatever, but like it's very brief. It's like they really don't go into detail that much. One thing I did like about the movies is that like I think it's in Two Towers. Yeah, it's in Two Towers where like because like Arwen is like a bigger character in the movies than she is in the books. Like it when they in Two Towers where she basically gets like it's like I think it's her dad who's like explaining to her why she can't go back to Aragorn and like how she'll just go to him and she'll have children and they'll have a kingdom, but like eventually he'll die and she'll be left alone to just wander the earth and like forever. The fact that they did that in that way in the movie and they just kind of made it sort of like a what if scenario, but that's not actually how it plays out, is really cool because in the books, in those appendices that I was talking about, that's exactly what happens. Like that's exactly what happens is that like they get married and she becomes queen and they have kids and stuff, and then like Aragorn lives for like longer than most humans, so I think he lives like 200 years or something after that, and then he dies, and then she wanders the earth for like thousands of years until she eventually, like, I don't know, they say something like becomes one with nature or something. Basically, they're saying that that's like the way that an immortal dies. Like, and it's like, that's really fucking tragic. That's like really sad. But the way that they did it in the movies was like, I don't know, it was better. Again, it was just like, it was sort of showing this what if like path of tragedy that might happen, but we don't see that spelled out in the movies. It is a happy ending, and I know that a lot of people have like issues with that, especially with like Aragorn and him being like, well, one man can't solve everything, and like, why is it he's the king of Gondor now, and like, but that doesn't solve all the world's issues. I get it, but like, it does complete his arc very nicely, and it does complete the story very nicely. So I don't know. I never really had a problem with it, but yeah, I don't know. Those movies are incredible, and I think, I mean, obviously, we started talking about those Peter Jackson movies before any of the other ones. One, because I'm pretty sure everyone's seen the Lord of the Rings movies here, right?
I have.
Yeah. Yeah, we've all seen them, and because that's like without a doubt, like Peter Jackson's crowning achievement of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like that's what everybody knows him from. Like that's the one thing that everyone will remember him for. And man, did those movies win a lot of awards, and deservedly
That's one of the most
so.
impressive things about it, right? Like that a fantasy movie actually, ended up making, winning so many awards. Like
and for like if anyone ever listens to this and they're young, like you don't understand. Like nerd culture is such a it's such a mainstream thing these days. You got the MCU, you have Game of Thrones and things. In the early 2000s, that wasn't a fucking thing. Like you would be ostracized for liking something like Game of Thrones. That show, something like that would have never fucking happened and been like this huge television phenomenon at that period of time or any time before. Like, so to have like Lord of the Rings, this fucking like completely fantastical high fantasy fucking world with elves and dwarves and hobbits and all this shit, just like make billions of dollars. And Return of the King, like Fellowship won like 11 Oscars, Two Towers won a few, and then Return of the King like swept it with like 13. And it was like holy shit, like that. It was groundbreaking. Like it was amazing. Like that just did not happen back then at all.
It really paved the way for other movies that that were based on on sci-fi or fantasy projects to be taken more seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
In a sense, you could you can make the argument that you would never have an end game if you had never had Lord of the Rings.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. They don't because whenever like people make any adaptation of like a comic or a book or something like that, and it's like a fantasy or sci-fi, they go for the easiest like slapstick kind of explanation for it. Mm-hmm. They don't take the characters like they're serious people, and they try to take the easy way out for some scenes or like story points, rather just overall story problems, or they're adding things that like wasn't like didn't make sense for the context of like the original book or the world that they're in. So it's like having that balance is like super important. You still doing a movie, yes, but you're also there's a world that has its own logic, and if you can't figure that out to add it, because like adding something new to it, you don't just add it and just okay, well it just works because sci-fi reasons or fantasy reasons. There's like a disconnect that you get with the audience, and it doesn't translate well. Yeah. And then first of all, I mean, just because it's a fantasy or a sci-fi or something that's really just high concept, they're still characters. They're still like, even if they're aliens or something, or they're some sort of monstrosity or something like that, there's still a humanizing element that you can add to the story. And, there's just like sometimes like when you get adaptations, they completely lose it. And they just.
That's all a really big challenge for the movie, right? Like there are so many characters to care for in the Lord of the Rings, and you really do care for all of them.
Yeah. There's these moments where they have to spend a certain amount of time to understand that character. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to do. It is a really amazing feat what they pulled off.
I mean, I think one of the best examples is like Boromir, right? Like what a fucking like 180 of a feeling for character, right? Where you start off with this dude from Gondor, and like he's this sort of like regal dude who like thinks he's better than everybody, and he doesn't think that Aragorn should be on the throne and all this shit, and like he tries to steal
there's a lot of doubt in that character.
Yeah, he tries to steal the ring from Frodo, and he like attacks him and all this stuff, and it's like, but then the way he defends Merry and Pippin against the Uruk-hai and gives his life in that fucking awesome death scene where he gets shot with an arrow and he gets up and he keeps fighting, gets shot again, and gets up, keeps fighting. It's like a classic scene now. Everyone knows that scene, and it's like
It's basically the scene that fomented, Sean Bean as the guy who's gonna die. Okay, he's gonna die if he's.
He died a lot of times before.
He has died a lot of times in a lot of other movies, but that was definitely the one where I think that's where Sean Bean is the dude who dies. That he became a household name after that scene.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where he kept dying prior. It's just that's the one that put him on the map of people
that got him noticed, so that he could die in more high-profile shit after that.
Oh my god. I mean, think about it. He died in fucking 007, Golden Eye, right?
Yeah,
was Golden Eye?
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, it's
that was a great death.
He felt his death in the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and then 007 makes it so the telescope falls on him.
Yeah.
Because he's not dead when he falls.
Yeah.
The whole thing falls on him.
Yeah.
And in real life, that telescope actually fell apart.
Oh.
Last year,
we know why, though, right? Because
exactly. Because there's Sean Bean.
Was Sean Bean there?
The only movie that I know that he doesn't die in is Ronin, which is an awesome 1998 movie with Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, Sean Bean, Tasha McElhone. I fucking love that movie. And he doesn't die in it. Like he plays like it's basically like a sort of a post Cold War like spy film that's sort of it's kind of in a Pulp Fiction-esque way where like they're looking for a case that's like there's something in it, but we never find out what it is. But they're mercenaries that are after this thing. And Sean Bean plays like this merc who's like, hey man, what kind of weapon do you use? And they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, where are you from? Like, how many tours did you do? And he's like, dude, what's wrong with this guy? And he's like, De Niro keeps like testing his knowledge and shit. He's like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, if they shot across, they would shoot each other. Any basic military grunt knows this. What's wrong with you? And they eventually realize like that he's like a complete poser. Like he's never been in the military. He's like he just wants to be one of them. Yeah. And instead of killing him, they just like, here's your money. Don't ever talk about this again. And or we'll come and kill you. And that's it. Like he's out of the movie. And that's the one and only time that I know that he survives in anything.
Oh man. But there. What about what was that? What? Shoot.
The one with the Concatas? What is that called?
Yeah, that's the one I was about to say. Equilibrium. Yes. Yeah. He died. He died in that one.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see that one. I didn't know he died.
What?
I'm kidding.
That's great. You got me there for a second. I was like, wait, what?
It's Equilibrium good. Like every time
I
like
I think it is.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it feels, cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it has that 90s like on a budget kind of thing.
Definitely. I mean, it feels cheap because it is cheap. Like it's cheaply made. Like it for sure.
For sure. Not that it's a bad thing necessarily. I'm surprised they were able to pull off this kind of futuristic post-apocalyptic world. With that kind of that kind of budget. But what about King Kong? Anybody seen that Peter Jackson stuff?
I never watched the whole thing. I think I watched the first half, and I didn't dislike it. I don't know why. I just didn't.
I remember watching it, and I remember that everybody in the movie theaters was watching in that one scene where like all the camera crews getting eaten by these giant worms, and it played out to be this tragic death, but they're getting eaten by giant worms.
Right.
They're flailing around like like there's no way you can take that seriously, man.
Well, I think the thing for me, like, and again, I haven't seen the whole movie, so I'm not gonna like judge it because I just haven't seen the whole thing. But like it just felt like it didn't feel different enough than every other King Kong adaptation before it, and there's been so many before it. It was even something like Kong Skull Island, which came out a few years ago with like Brie Larson, and it's got Tom Hiddleston and Samuel L. Jackson, and they go to the island and they find Kong and they're fighting like all the other monsters. I like that movie I enjoyed that movie. I thought it was far, far better than the parts of King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong that I saw. And it felt different. It felt like they were really exploring like the other monsters on the island, which is something we didn't really get very much of in any of the other adaptations of King Kong. And it also set it up for obviously the franchise that they're building with like the Monsterverse and Godzilla and Mothra and movie, King Kong and
latest movie where Godzilla versus King Kong.
Yeah,
every King Kong adaptation is just a paint by numbers remake.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the Peter Jackson one, it's just
yeah.
Hey, look, it's more it's not more practical, but like, hey, look, special effects. Okay, yeah, it's. I mean, the journey's fine, and Jack Black is okay. Playing the guy who wants to run the show, going like, oh, I'm going to throw these bottles of, it was chloroform, like not sleeping gas, but chloroform, just like, wow, I'm surprised he has that kind of aim to throw it at that fucking 40-foot ape. It's like, Jesus.
One hell of an arm.
Okay, so, I mean, like, go on, keep it going.
No, it's just like that. That's pretty much it. Nothing really special about it. It's just like it's a movie to have if you're like wanting to flex your theater system or something. But that's pretty much it.
True. It has always been, groundbreaking when it came to special effects, right? Like the very first King Kong from like 1920s and 30s was using special effects.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think I didn't really like. That was definitely not my favorite of his stuff. Not really like. I don't know. I can't remember it. I can't remember it for the life of me. Like, it's just so forgettable. And I agree on the other King Kong that came out it was definitely more interesting. Just because that there was just enough of the. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the whole bring him to the fucking city and he reigns terror in the city. I don't know. Like, there's something about that just like, it's just, I don't know, really boring. Because I mean, I guess the spectacle.
Seen it so many times, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Like, I mean, that was the thing about the Peter Jackson one. Like, even though I didn't see the whole thing, I knew it was going to happen. We all know what's going to happen.
Right.
Like, everybody knows King Kong. Like, you know that they go there. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to fucking go, and then they capture him, and then he falls in love with the lady, and he fucking wreaks havoc on the city, and then he dies. Like, we all know, like, we all know the story. And it was just like, it was very paint by numbers, and that's why I think I just got bored with it. It was just like, what is new here? Like, what's new here?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there was a very competent video game based on that. There was literally a video game for the GameCube, PlayStation 2 era, called King Kong, the official game of the movie.
Right.
Catch a title.
Fantastic.
But it was made by Ubisoft at the time, and it was trying to do the kind of thing where like they really immerse you into the into the scene, where there was very minimal HUD, and you played both as a first person. It was both a first person shooter, and sometimes you also played as King Kong himself.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of things happening in there.
Yeah, it was apparently pretty good, but it was by the creator of Beyond Good and Evil, and
interesting.
Yeah, and some of the Rayman games, the good ones.
So I guess pretty much everybody here is in agreement that the best, of course, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, you could take what you want on which of the trilogy is your favorite.
It's the Hobbit.
And
Rise of the Five Armies
was like really down there.
I never even watched the third Hobbit movie because I was just so sick of it. I was so sick of it. Like after the first two, I was just like, "This is fucking."
Yeah, I guess that's totally fine. Yeah.
I don't care. Like don't you want to be in the conversation? It's like, what kind of like?
Yeah,
these movies suck. Like that's the conversation for me. Like it ends there. Like it's they're terrible.
Yeah, they really did not like do well with the storylines.
No, the storylines, like the 12 Dwarves, like I don't care about of them. Like I don't,
I mean, here's the funny thing. Like in the books, like they are those 12, those 12 dwarves, and they all have the exact same sounding names, like Killy, Millie, Dilly, Dildo, whatever. And that's kind of the joke that you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to forget which one is which.
Right. Which doesn't work for a movie when you want to make them feel like characters that you want to have emotions linked to. But that's the thing. Like we were talking about with Lord of the Rings, there's 9 people in the Fellowship of the Ring, plus all these other ancillary characters like Arwen and Eowyn and like all these other people that you care so much more about. And it's like they're juggling pretty much the same number of characters in The Hobbit, but it's just
not that.
It doesn't work at all. Like it doesn't work
that's
at
not
all.
compelling. Not compelling enough.
There's a reason why the Hobbit is called The Hobbit, and all the dwarves, Gilly, Dilly, Dildo, and stuff featuring also a Hobbit.
They just needed to like focus a little bit more on like just the minimal characters that they would need to focus on. I feel like that the 3 Hobbits in my perspective was like it felt like 3 completely different movies. Like it didn't connect well, or like the arc and the journey kind of made sense in all its intent. It's like the only thing that was like for me that was interesting that could give any saving grace of what was like I forget what was the name of the guy that was the leader of the shit. Like he was supposed to be the king. He's a mini Aragorn.
He's a mini Aragorn.
The dwarf,
like the only thing that was interesting for me was that he had this treading line of villainy, and it reflected on the Hobbit's kind of also addiction. I wouldn't say addiction, but like the what's the word?
It's supposed to be the Ring 2.0.
Kind of, I guess. Like they're wanting of something, like the allure to like one. The Hobbit was getting, he's being like wants the like the reflection of him getting the ring. Like that sense of power, right? I think in general that's what it should have been mainly, but there was too many villains, like Smaug, like the fucking dragon, and then like the what was that, the elf guy, and then it was like you kind of put in the fucking what was that the troll? God, he's not a troll. It was
Hey, don't do
the white
the goblin in the beginning.
Was it the goblin?
In the first one,
he's
where
the
they're
white
like
one.
inside the
white one with like
the missing arm. There's just too many things happening. Like it was just too many villains. And then the necromancer thing, like it came out of it was just like I don't know, man. Like it was just too many things.
The necromancer is supposed to be Sauron, right?
Exactly, right. Which is like like as you're watching it, like you're like, why even put that there? Like I don't even like it didn't like the whole thing didn't add up to like the one villain or like the one thing that we know that we're going towards, and then like the conflict that the main character has. Like I understand the conflict between those two characters, that they're both kind of being attracted to like, hey, I'm due this like legacy of mine. So he's the main character wants to bring his people back from just being minors, I guess. Like I get that, but then like the villains didn't like they weren't villains. They were just not interesting to conflict with the main character. For me, it felt like a lot of mixed bag going on there, where like just did not have the focus. Then there's like that side character with the love interest, like with the elf. I was just like, that was just kind of random. Like there was no through line of like, why are we doing all this?
I mean, it's all
that actress,
Evangeline Lilly.
They did her so dirty. She specifically asked not to be in a love triangle because she was always in a love triangle. And what did they give her?
Yeah,
that's
triangle.
Funny.
Yep.
I mean that's the thing is like I think this is the whole. I think I talked about this on one of the previous episodes when we brought this up, but like the whole trilogy is of the Hobbit trilogy is just it's so contrived like it's so forced. Like everything that we were talking about, all the characters and the conflicts, and whether it's making the necromancer into another character, or whether it's forcing these love triangles, or whether it's adding characters like Legolas, or even inventing new characters like Toriel, who's Evangeline Lilly's character. Like, it's just like they had to do so much to actually make these things into fucking movies that it's just like, like it's all, so much of it is just padding. And it's just like, we already know exactly what's going to happen in the story because we saw it in the Fellowship of the Ring when Galadriel is narrating the history of the ring and how Bilbo found it in a cave. And it's just like that, like that 15 or 20 second, exposition of Bilbo, Hobbit found the ring. And, eventually, after Isildur lost it and it became myth and myth became legend and all this stuff. And then, the unlikeliest of creature found it and it was Bilbo. And it's just like, that's all we needed. Yeah. We didn't need this story to be told. Like the book itself is a good book, but frankly, I don't think it should have been made into a movie at all, let alone 3 movies. But I don't think it should have been made into a movie at all, just because like we got enough and we already know exactly what's going to happen and we already know how it ends. And it's just like, I don't know. I just felt like the whole thing is just like, even if it started with like the best intentions, like it really just sort of in my mind feels like a contrived cash grab in the end.
Oh yeah, I mean the biggest problem for those movies, I disagree that that book couldn't become a movie. It's just that
I don't think that it couldn't, but I don't necessarily think that it should have been made into a movie. Especially after Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think that the problem for them is that they tried to remake the Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit.
Right.
And A, there's not enough material there, and B, it's just not that type of book. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's a totally exactly. It's not that type of book. And if you're gonna make a movie, if you're gonna make a Hobbit movie, you need to like the way that they adapted, but were still true to the source material with Lord of the Rings, like it would have made the Hobbit movie a completely different movie than what Lord of the Rings was as a trilogy of movies. And I get that, like, that would, like, to mass audiences, that wouldn't have been as appealing, which is why they had to change it and put all this fluff in and make it more like Lord of the Rings. But it's just like,
I
don't know, either stay faithful to it or just like don't make it at all. Like, I don't know. Like it,
originally it wasn't going to be directed by Peter Jackson. Like it
was
originally
Guillermo
was
del
actually
Toro.
going to be
For 2 years, he and his family moved to New Zealand. Yeah.
And obviously, he was going to do a two-part two-part movie for The Hobbit, which I can see definitely that book having enough material for 2 books. And I'm I don't know exactly what the length of the movies would have been, but he wouldn't have this was Guillermo del Toro. He wasn't going to make another Lord of the Rings. He was going to make another movie that that fits his style of movie making itself.
I mean, visually. I mean, it was still co-written by at that draft at least was co-written by him and Peter Jackson and the other 2 writers of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Huh.
And that's the thing, is that like it's not that Peter Jackson took over. It's not that he took the reins over. Guillermo del Toro like felt the pressure of it, and he's like, I can't do this. And Peter Jackson unreluctantly had to take over the production. So it's like you can tell, like, by the quality of the films, he doesn't even want to be there. Like, he doesn't even want to direct the fucking trilogy. So it's just like, I mean, that alone is a big red flag that maybe you shouldn't make the fucking movies. But I mean, obviously in that, when you're that far into it and you have writers and you have all this stuff like already in motion, you can't just stop the machine. But like, it's just a shame because like none of the pieces fit together from the jump.
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, what ended up happening is that, well, I mean, Guillermo del Toro wanted to make his movies. Like, he wanted to make something that he was more comfortable doing something that that was actually his vision. And in cinema was like, no, you're gonna make another. We want you to make it with this predisposition. So you had to make it a lot more a la Lord of the Rings. So those two worlds just weren't going to mesh together. So at some point Peter Jackson was like, look, if you're not gonna give me the creative freedom to do what I want to do with this movie, I just can't be in this project. And so at that point, once he left, Neil and Cinema had to beg Peter Jackson. It's like, hey, take the script, make it into Lord of the Rings all over again. So you can definitely feel that kind of pressure of like trying to rework all the assets and all the script that had been made into some sort of you know Frankenstein of a movie that both blended The Hobbit and that kind of gave you a preamble to Lord of the Rings. Yeah, but
Yeah,
not in a very
don't know for sure if but yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree that like there was something going on there that got messed up in the translation.
Yeah.
Don't know like all of it for a fact, but certainly enough to know that the handoff wasn't as clean, and there's definitely was pressure to make it another Lord of the Rings. So, I mean, you could feel that at the very least, but yeah, it's not easy. That's a lot of commitment making 3 fucking films. Having it connected in the same like vein as trying to do it like Lord of the Rings. Jeez, I think him Peter Jackson just making the first 3 Lord of the Rings took plenty of years out of his life. Like piece of his he's like, oh man, I thought I was gonna live another 10 more years. Nah, that just went into making Lord of the Rings. Probably so burnt out by that point.
Have we watched anything else by Peter Jackson?
I've seen Frighteners and I've seen The Lovely Bones. I remember Lovely Bones being pretty good, but it's been a while. Like, this is a 2009 film. That one was like the synopsis is centers on a young girl who became or young girl who has been murdered and watches over her family and her killer from purgatory. She must weigh her desire for vengeance against her desire for her family to heal. And then the main characters are Mark Wahlberg, Rachel Weisz, Susan Sarandon, Stanley Tucci is in it. And I think the main character is how do you say her name? Sorais? Sorais?
Oh,
Ronan? Last name Ronan. She was in Hannah.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I forget how to pronounce her name. She had a whole thing with Stephen Colbert.
Oh.
Saoirse Ronan?
Saoirse Ronan? Oh, okay.
That girl from all those movies.
But yeah, I like
Bird.
that film. It was, I think, to some level, I think people might have expected it to be more of like a horror film, but it wasn't really that. It was more, had a bit of thriller to it, but I don't know, like based on the film being on the perspective of the person that's dead was really interesting. And almost like it's like you're seeing the other side where she's trying so hard to communicate to her family and then like the killer, and yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. I remember that at most was the most intriguing thing about that film. So
did anybody ever watch Dead Alive?
I still haven't
seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen
it. It was weird.
I really want to see it.
I don't really remember it. I remember it being I remember enjoying it, and I remember it like I didn't realize that it was more of a comedy than a horror movie. But yeah, I remember liking it.
Yeah, it's definitely on that same comedy horror gross out gore type of genre. The synopsis on Wikipedia is overprotective mother spying on her grown son as he visits the zoo She gets bitten by some fearsome Sumatra rat monkey. And that's how she becomes a zombie, and she keeps trying to escape. And so, he keeps trying to keep her in, and she keeps escaping, so she ends up infecting the entire town. The
Right.
one scene that just really just like messes with my head, to date, is the fact that as a giant, gross, disgusting, monster zombie thing, he grabs her son and tries to shove him back into her own womb.
Oh yeah.
So for all those people who just took classes about Freud, you have a whole thing to dissect right there.
Yeah, I just remember him like going through like the room full of zombies with the lawnmower and like all the gore that, like happened from that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because he's not just covered in blood; he's covered in paste.
Yeah,
Right,
paste and viscera and all
yeah,
that.
it's like it's blended mesh of flesh with blood. Oh, that's crazy, man. I have yet to see it, and it's definitely one of those films that I really keep on telling myself I'm gonna eventually see that. But yeah. So those are the films I've seen other than of Peter Jackson's stuff. Frighteners and The Lovely Bones. That one's pretty good.
Yeah. He hasn't done anything since then, huh? What's the latest thing he did after The Hobbit?
He's apparently making. He made a documentary.
Oh, okay.
He made a documentary, and then he's making a Tintin film.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 2D or 3D animated because, I mean, the last one was 3D, right? I still haven't seen it. 2011, I think. Yeah. Really, real fucking realistic looking. Like, man, it's like almost uncanny, but like almost there, but not quite.
Yeah.
That one was handled by Nickelodeon Films, and they had a good idea of how to handle that.
Yeah, it's like interesting how these days in CG films they are capable of making pretty realistic effects and textures, but then still not make it feel like you're seeing some like over hyper real Homer Simpson. Where it's like extra disturbing.
Art too, huh?
Yeah. You got
Homer with capillaries and veins and shit, and he's all brown and sickly looking. Hey, Marge,
but yet has the maldeformed kind of like exaggerated silhouette of his cartoon counterpart, but everything else is like hyper real,
There always, it is, yeah.
That's always fucking weird to me, like disturbing as fuck. But yeah, and hitting that middle ground where you can still have kind of hyperrealism in parts of it, but still pull off that kind of endearing silhouette of cartooniness. That's hard. Like you have to like really. I mean, Sonic, that's a perfect example of that, right? That, like, it had such huge backlash on that shit. But, yeah, that's just animated stuff. But,
I like a good old-fashioned puppet show, which is why one of my favorite Peter Jackson movies is Meet the Feebles, which is, they described it as Muppets on acid, but I think that's a very unfair comparison. It's just a puppet show, and there's it's a production like the Muppets, but that's as far as the similarities end. It's really just like this entertainer who runs a drug peddling business on the side, and that's kind of a B plot sometimes, but it's just a bunch of puppet animals and suits and stuff just doing stupid shit. And like I love it so much because it makes me laugh. And at the time I first watched it, it was like 1998, and I went to this gaming forum and I started joking about how Rare would be making a Meet the Feebles game on like, oh yeah, Rareware is so going to make a Meet the Feebles game on the Nintendo 64, and they're like, yeah, Rare would never do anything that gross and that stupid. Well, who gets the last laugh now? Because Conker's Bad Fur Day is almost like Meet the Feebles, and that shit has like piss and humor and literal shit.
Did you go back to that forum post and like link them to the?
Oh, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
Man,
AOL forums were a different force back then.
Man, I always wanted to play that game. Conker's Bad for a Day. It sounds fantastic.
It's like it did all the things that you wouldn't expect Rare to do. But the fact is, before that game came out, well, not before the game, it was a different game before it, launched. It had a different game. It had a different roadmap for what they wanted to do with the game.
Right, it was supposed to be just another friendly platformer, and instead, they turn it into this like subversion of the, family-friendly platformer.
Exactly. It was going to be like 12 Tales of Conquer, and then, oh, look, there's alcohol, and there's all sorts of sex jokes and everything. It's like, oh, but the Rare would never make a game like that. Well, I get the last laugh. Funny how things work, really. But honestly, I have the video saved on my tablet, so it's good background noise, good noise fodder. I like the walrus because he's such an asshole, and he's got the funniest voice on that show. Not the funniest voice, but he's like one of the funniest characters because he's a jerk and an asshole, and he deserves whatever happens to him. But like, it's just you just can't help but like look at that shit and go like, yeah, Fletch is a curmudgeon, but he's a funny curmudgeon.
Meet the Feebles. All right, I'll definitely check that one out.
You might actually find that somewhere easily. I'm not going to say where or what site, but I will say it's not hard to find.
Got it. What?
I don't know. Like, just the way that he set it up, it's like, I'm not gonna tell you which one.
It may well be on board. It may as well.
He made it.
Oh man.
Jeez. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's so inconspicuous way of explaining it.
Right.
Cool.
I don't know. I was hearing that a lot of people were watching. That was like their source to watch. Can't remember a trailer for a video game or for a movie from Pornhub. I'm like, okay.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the source that would go there, but I guess to each their own.
Amazing.
All right.
Oh, that's like joking.
I think that's it for Peter Jackson, and I think that's it for this episode. But we will start talking about some other directors, but we'll also start talking about some actors too. And I think our first one, we should definitely talk Wesley Snipes because he's going to be the funniest one to talk about. Some good ones out there. Sure, certainly good films. And then, some weird background story with him or like, some of the weird things we've heard. And then, we'll go over some other directors and whatnot, eventually moving our way into games maybe. But yeah, I think that's we've covered everything we needed to for Peter Jackson, I think, right? Is there any ending comment with him?
Yeah, he sucks.
Damn.
No.
More like, make more films, shit.
I know. Please
hurry up.
I really hope Peter Jackson. I'm sure Peter Jackson will never hear this, but again, it's just a joke. You're the best if you ever hear this for some reason. If you're really desperate to hear some random guys.
Yeah, he listens to every podcast that ever exists.
If it somehow makes it, to him, I'm sorry. It's just a joke. You're the best.
Gotta cover your bases, right?
Yeah.
Just in case. Yeah, all right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.